Okay, good morning one and all. We are going to see the new lesson, reproduction in lower and the higher plants. The reproduction we have studied in the low standard as well. It is a kind of the characteristics which is shown by a different living organism, and it is the ability of organism to produce the new individual as the same kind as like the parent. Okay, it is said to be reproduction. The most of the living organisms, they normally show the different types of the characteristics like the respiration, like the circulation, reproduction, then different the sense to the stimuli. The other characteristics, those are normally shown by living organism, as like we are going to see. It is the reproduction. The reproduction takes place in the living organism by two different methods. The one, asexual reproduction. The second, the sexual reproduction. Then the lower organism, among them, the asexual reproduction takes place. Among them, we are going to see the binary fission, budding, then sporulation, fragmentation. It takes place in the lower organism. Lower organism means what? Those kind of the organism structure we can't make out with the help of our naked eye. If we want to study them, then we normally use the microscope. We call it as a compound microscope, electron microscope. With the help of these highly specialized biological microscope, only we can study them. Okay, if you want to just see about the amoeba structure, we can't make out with the help of naked eye. Okay, that is why we call them as a lower organism. The binary fission, how exactly takes place to the amoeba? Let us see. Amoeba, which is said to be unicellular animal, it is said to be shapeless animal. Okay, it doesn't have the proper shape and size like the other highly evolved animals. But that binary fission, bi means how many? Two. Fission means what? Body division. The amoeba, which is said to be unicellular, that unicellular cell get divided and to give rise the two equal shaped cell. That is why we call it as a binary fission. So most of the lower organism like the amoeba, like the bacteria, among them binary fission takes place. The second we are going to see, it is said to be fragmentation. We are well known about the algae. Algae you must have seen nearby the aquatic habitat, or moisture which is present, or the wet soil where you must have seen the green colored algae. Those are growing profusely. Basically, among them, the fragmentation process takes place by certain the external factor. If suppose the algae body, if it is get divided into the fragment, then each and every fragment which is having capacity to give rise to live their life as a individual life. That is why it is said to be fragmentation. The third we are going to see, it is said to be budding. The budding takes place in the yeast. Yeast, we are well know about it. It is said to be unicellular fungus. That unicellular cell just try to use surrounding medium like the water or any other medium as a food material, and it normally little bit attain their maximum size. Means what? Swell over there. Then certain the gradual changes takes place in its cell. Little bit outgrowth takes place, and slowly that the outgrowth of the cell, which is normally look like the bird. By karyokinesis process, the two different types of the nuclei get formed. One get passed toward the daughter cell, means what? Toward the bird, and then that bird which is use certain the food material from the parent cell, and then gradual changes takes place. Slowly it gets potential to live their life as a individual life. Then that bird get detached from the parent cell and live their life as an individual life. It takes place in the yeast fungus. Then next, which is said to be sporulation. The sporulation takes place in some of the algae or some of the fungi as well. By the spore formation process, it takes place. So in this way, we have seen about the asexual reproduction takes place in the lower organism by 4 different ways. The one which is said to be binary fission, it takes place in the amoeba. The second, which is said to be fragmentation, it takes place in the algae. Third, budding, it takes place in the yeast. And the fourth we have seen, that is the sporulation, it takes place in some of the algae and in the some of the fungi. So in this way, the asexual reproduction takes place in the lower organism. Let us see about the asexual reproduction takes place in the plants. Angiospermic plant. Angiospermic plant means what? The seed bearing plant. Okay. So you must have seen about the mango plant. The mango plant, once the fruiting season comes, especially we can say the March, April, May. These are the months where exactly the fruiting season which is get started in our the region, and the seeds are present within the fruit. So seed bearing plants, so we call them as a angiospermic plant. The two different types of the methods are like the natural and the artificial. Naturally, asexual reproduction takes place by vegetative propagations. Vegetative propagation means what? You must have known about the vegetative part of the plant. Which are those? Those are said to be root, stem, leaf. Okay. With the help of these parts of the plant which is new plant may get arise. Okay. That is why it is said to be vegetative propagations. Among them, the different other types are there. The first we are going to see, it is said to be tuberous root. You must have known about the tuberous root. Example we can give about the sweet potato, especially one that fast, which is if you are fast, then you are well known about it, because it is normally used as the food material during the fast period. Okay, sweet potato, it is the example of the tuberous root. It normally look like the tube like structure, tube like shape, but it is said to be underground tuberous root. The second, which is said to be stem. The three different types of the stems are there. One which is said to be underground. Second, subaerial. Subaerial means what? The half part of the stem which is present above the soil, and the half part of the stem which is present below the soil. And the third type of the stem which is said to be aerial. The underground stem, among them, the first, it is said to be stem tuber. We are well known about the potato. That potato we normally eat in our day-to-day life. You must have eaten the vada pav, and for the vada preparation as well, the potato which is used, and that potato which is said to be underground stem. Okay, it is get swollen in nature because the excess food material which is get stored in the modified the stem. That is why it has certain the purpose to storage the food material. Okay. Then the stem tuber example we have seen about that is potato. Okay. The next one is which is said to be rhizome. You must have seen about the ginger. So basically within that rhizome, it is a modified stem. It is also get little bit swollen in nature because the extra food material prepared by the leaves, aerial part of the plant, it normally gets stored in the rhizome. Then the next which is said to be bulb. Then the core. Okay, so bulb we can give the example about the onions. Okay, then corns. So these are the certain the underground modification of the stem, and all the four types of the underground stem, they have the same purpose. They store the extra food material prepared by the plant. Let us say about the subaerial part. Subaerial modified the stem, among them runner. then sucker, then stolon, then offset. Runner among them, we can give the example about the Cynodon ductilon as a Durva plant. Now the I think especially in case of Ganpati festival, this type of the plant, we call it as a Durva plant. You must have used to worship your the dearest god, Lord Ganpati. Okay, so it is said to be runner. So that, then next which is said to be sucker, then third it is said to be stolon, and the fourth which is said to be offset. Okay, then stolon means what? Those type of the stems are there, they just prostrate along the soil layer. Offset, different types of the aquatic plants are there, among them Ecornia, then Pistia. They have the stem, it is said to be hollow in nature, and it just normally grow on the that water layer. It is said to be modified offset, modified stem. The aerial, among them the bulbils are there. Then especially the leaf, I think you must have seen about the bryophyllum leaf. It certain shows the different the sprouting nature, the leaflet like structure, especially in our time we used to keep that leaf in our the textbook, notebook, and after few days that the plantlet which is start to grow at the knot region. Okay, at the knot region, if you cut it properly and if you potted it, then that kind of the plant may get arise. So bryophyllum, we can give the example, it takes place the vegetative propagation which is takes place with the help of the leaf. Okay, artificial one, among them the cutting, grafting, budding, then layering, micropropagations. Cutting and grafting, budding, these kind of the processes, those are normally used in the horticulture, in the nursery as well, by especially for increase the yield capacity of the different crop plant. Especially in the Konkan region, we normally used to make the column. Okay, so cashew nut column, then the mango column. So those are normally we can do it, cultivate them by using the process like the cutting and the grafting as well. Okay, let us see about the significance of the vegetative reproduction. It is quite easy and cheaper method of multiplication. The the formation of the genetically similar organism, because it is a type of the asexual reproduction, that is why there is no fusion of the gametes. Okay, the next, it is said to be rapid method. If you want to get yield as early as possible, then this method, which is said to be the easiest method to get yield as early as possible. Then fourth, which is said to be useful in the plants that do not produce their visible seed, increase the yield by the grafting and layering, etc. Then desired characteristics can be combined by the grafting. Desired characteristics means what? Those the high yield capacity, the disease free, insect free, this type of the characteristics we can say as a desired characteristics. Okay, so in this way we have seen about the significance. The question used to ask in the exam, write the significance of the vegetative reproduction in the plants. Okay, then this almost 4 we have to write. Okay, let's move ahead. The sexual reproduction in the plant. In the plant, the flower is said to be site where exactly the sexual reproduction takes place. Okay, the flower, which is said to be reproductive part of the plant as well. In the flower, if you observe carefully about its structure, it has 2 different types of the sex organ. The one which is said to be androecium, then second which is said to be gynoecium. Androecium, gynoecium, these are said to be essential floral whorls. Androecium is a male sex organ, gynoecium which is said to be female sex organ. Androecium, which is having 3 different types of the part. The androecium, it is said to be that cap like structure which is said to be anther. Then stalk like portion, it is said to be filament. Anther plus filament get together, the stamen we call to the androecium. Then gynecium is said to be female sex organ. It is having three different parts. The tip portion is stigma, then the stalk portion is style, and the swollen portion at the base of the gynecium we call it as a ovary. Okay, so these are the floral whorls, essential floral whorl. Others accessory floral whorl, among them calyx, corolla. If you observe carefully about the flower from the outermost side, the calyx which is found in the green in color, each and every part of the calyx which is said to be sepal. The sepal may be 5, 4, okay, it is totally depend on which type of the flower is there. Corolla, you must have seen about the different types of the colored petals, and those are found in different varieties in color, okay, and those petals are there, they united to form to give rise the floral whorl. It is said to be corolla. So in this way we have seen about the different types of the floral parts, floral whorls we call them, like the androecium, gynecium, essential floral whorl, calyx, corolla. It is said to be accessory floral whorls. From the androecium we get the pollen grain as a male gametophyte. From the gynecium we get the female gametophyte in the form of ovule. Then the process of sexual reproduction, how exactly it takes place in the plant, that's what we are going to see. Okay, anther, as we have seen about the anther part, the cap like structure, okay, it is said to be anther. Within that different types of the, if you observe carefully about the anther part, then you must have seen about the how exactly its structure is there. Okay, the anther, then the connective which is present, two different anther lobes are there. If you just see about the TS of anther structure, then you must have seen, then you can easily make out the four chambers are there, four different locules are present over there at that particular part. The MMC cell, microspore mother cells are present, okay, and they normally synthesis the pollen grain by the microsporogenesis process. Okay, the pollen grain which is said to be male gametophyte, another name to the pollen grain, it is said to be microspore. Okay, the anther of the stamen which having the which undergoing the microsporogenesis process, and with the help of microsporogenesis process the formation of the microspore or the pollen grain which takes place. Then the pollen grain which is initially which is said to be unicellular, then it undergoing the two unequal the cell division process. The larger cell is said to be tube cell, smaller cell is generative cell. Then the generative cell undergoing the another cell division, then two generative cell get formed, then one tube cell, likewise the three cell structure get formed, two generative cell which is having their own individual nucleus, and those nuclei are acting as a male gametophyte. Okay, the two male gametes are produced by the one pollen grain structure. Okay, let us see about the ovule. Ovule, the another name to the gynecium which is said to be carpels. Okay, at the base of the carpel or the gynecium the ovary which is present, and in the ovary the ovules are present. The ovules are produced by the megasporogenesis process. Okay, the megaspore, another name to the megaspore, we call it as a ovule as well. It is acting as a female gametophyte in the sexual for reproduction. It is said to be female gamete, and male gamete as a by the pollen grain, female gamete from the ovule. If they fertilize with each other, then fertilize takes place, then the formation of the seed and the fruits which are normally takes place. Okay, let us see about the structure of the anther. Anther is said to be male reproductive floral whorl. It is said to be essential floral whorl, as we have seen about the its part. The cap-like structure is said to be anther. Stalk-like portion is said to be filament, and anther plus filament, androecium, which is said to be essential floral whorl get formed. The anther which is said to be fertile part, at that part the four different chambers are present, at that each and every chamber where exactly microsporogenesis process get conducted, and by that process the microspore or the pollen grain those are formed. Then the filament which is said to be stalk of the anther. It attaches to the anther to the flower. Okay. Then connective, it just connect the two different lobes of the anther. That is the main role of the connective. Let us see about the TS of anther. If you observe carefully about the TS of anther, then you must have seen the different types of the layers are there. The first layer, which is said to be epidermis, below to the epidermis another wall layer which is present, it is said to be endothecium. Then 2-3 layers are present, those we call them as a middle layer. And again, if you just go inside, then it is said to be the tapetum wall layer. And tapetum wall layer, it gives rise the all nourishment which is required for the microsporogenesis process. Okay. Basically, at that particular region, the MMC cells are present, microspore mother cells are present. They require certain the nourishment to produce the microspore or the pollen grain. It is normally get nourished out with the help of tapetum wall layer. Okay. So in this way, the different wall layers are present. Then the one by one we are going to see the TS of anther, epidermis, outermost wall layer. It is having certain the flattened cells. It is protective in nature. Then below to it endothecium. Then the next middle layer, 2-3 wall layers are present. The next layer which is said to be tapetum. The tapetum which is said to be innermost layer, which is surrounded by the sporogenous tissues. Then it provides the nourishment to for developing the microspore, for developing the pollen grain. Then inside to it, the MMC cells are present. We call them as a microsporangium. Microspore mother cells are present. Then with the help of it, the that is microsporogenesis process which is get conducted. And from the one microspore mother cell, it just divided meiotically to give rise the 4 haploid spores. Okay. The diploid mother cell which is said to be having 2 sets of the chromosome. Then structure of the pollen grain. The pollen grain which is said to be unicellular initially, then it undergoing the cell division process. The unicellular pollen grain which is having a dense cytoplasm. It is haploid oval in nature. Then it is covered by the double walled layer. We call them as a sporoderm. It consists the 2 different layers. Outermost layer is said to be exine. Innermost layer is said to be entine. Okay. So let us see exine. Exine outermost layer, it is said to be highly resistant. Then spine is smooth, composed of the sporopollenin. The sporopollenin is a kind of the protein material which is present. It just avoids to decompose the nature of the pollen grain. Okay. Then it is normally interrupted by one or more places, then forming the pores. We call them as a germ pore. The innermost layer of the pollen grain is said to be entine. Entine, it is composed of the cellulose pectin, then encloses the protoplasm with the single haploid nucleus. Let us see development of the male gametophyte. As we have seen about the androecium, which is said to be male sex organ, which is give rise the male gametophyte in the form of pollen grain, and that pollen grain undergo in the development process before pollination and after pollination. Okay. The microspore or the pollen grain which is said to be male gametophyte, it undergo in the developing process, as I told you earlier, before pollination, and the second which is said to be after pollination. Let us say about the before pollination. As I told you earlier, the pollen grain which is said to be unicellular in nature, it is having dense cytoplasm. Then it undergo in the cell division process. Those are said to be unequal cell which are normally get formed. One is said to be generative cell, another which is said to be tube cell. The smaller cell which is said to be generative cell, larger is said to be that is tube cell. The generative cell again undergoing the cell division process to give rise the 2 different, the generative cell and the single tube cell. So in this way the 3-celled pollen grain structure get formed, and that structure which is said to be the ready for the fertilization. Okay. So in this way the development of the pollen grain, which are male gametophyte, which are takes place before pollination. Then the whichever kind of the germ pores are present, if suppose the angiospermic pollen grain, among them dicot pollen grains are present, then 3 germ pores are present. Germ pores means what? Opening. Okay, so at that particular site the pollen tube which normally takes place, and then the male gametophyte, male gametes are there of the generative cell, those get attracted toward the pollen tube. So basically the pollen tube which normally takes place after the pollination. Okay, so let us see the after pollination how exactly the changes takes place in the pollen grain or the male gametophyte. The two cells pollen grain structure which is get deposited on the stigma region of the gynoecium by different agencies, pollinating agencies, maybe biotic, maybe abiotic. Then it just try to absorb the different types of the material which are present on the stigma region of the gynoecium, and then finally the pollen tube which normally get formed, and whichever kind of the generative cell which is having their nuclei, those get attracted toward the pollen tube. We call them as a male gametes, and those get attracted toward the female gametophyte for the fusion. Okay, the as we have seen about the gynoecium which is having three different parts. The upper part which is said to be the stigma, middle part which is said to be style, and the lower portion of the gynoecium we call it as a ovary. At the ovary the ovules are present. Okay, the ovule which is said to be the female gametophyte, and those pollen grain those get traveled toward the ovule for the fertilization. For it, that pollen tube which is get extend and extend, grow and grow toward the ovule. It is get extend from the tip portion of the gynoecium, we call it the stigma, and then the style, and then finally it reaches toward the that is the ovule part. Okay, so in this way the 3 celled structure of the pollen grain which is undergoing the different types of the changes, it takes place after the pollination. So I think this much part it is quite enough, and the next part of the lecture we are going to continue in the next lecture. Thank you.